guys, so I'm here today for a book haul. I have quite the exciting stack of books, so let's just jump straight in, shall we? Okay, I'm going to start off with the two books that I bought myself in Gaze the Word, which is an independent bookshop here in London, and it's the bookshop that is actually at the centre of the film Pride, if you've seen that, because Pride is a true story, and I love this bookshop. It's amazing. The staff there have so many excellent recommendations, and thanks to those recommendations I was able to pick up these two books. I have been on the hunt for some high fantasy literature featuring female romances as opposed to your typical male-female romance, and it is so hard to find fantasy with women in love with other women. It is just hard. But thanks to Gaze the Word, I have picked up two. Now, the first one is The Tiger's Daughter by Kay Arsenault Rivera. Now, this one's an adult book, and this is the one that kept coming up when I was looking for recommendations online. This seems to be the book if this is what you're looking for. So I'm hoping it does turn out to be a good book. This is set in a magical but dying empire where two female warriors kind of rise up above the rest to perhaps save their world, do something great. That's what people usually do in fantasy books, and there's obviously a romance between those two characters as well, so I'm really excited for this one. I then also have a young adult book in a similar vein, which is Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coolhurst. This is about a princess with a secret magical power that she can't tell anybody about or she would be in danger, and she is betrothed to a prince in order to bring their kingdoms together, but I imagine she actually has fallen in love with another young woman. So I'm really excited for these two. I hope they fulfill what I've been looking for, and it is such a shame though that it's so hard to find gay women at the centre of fantasy, but I found a couple recommendations, so there you are if you're looking for some as well. The next book was actually a gift from my mother, and this is Octavia's Brood, Science Fiction Stories from Social Justice Movements. So this is an anthology of science fiction stories by various different authors. I imagine the title is taken from Octavia Butler, who is a famous science fiction writer, and they all centre around sort of politics and idealised societies and exploring social issues through science fiction, which is something that I think science fiction does really well if the author really commits themselves to it. So I'm really interested to read these. I've never actually read anything by any of the authors in this book, so I'm hoping that I'll also discover some new interesting science fiction authors whilst I'm reading. The next couple of books I was sent by publishers, and the first one is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is Naomi Novik's latest book, and it is inspired by the fairy tale of Rumpelstiltskin, which sounds so interesting. I haven't read a full-length retelling of Rumpelstiltskin before, and it's actually a fairy tale I've always really enjoyed and found very interesting, so I'm really excited to see what Naomi Novik does with that. She has in the past written another sort of fairy tale-esque book which was called Uprooted, which I haven't actually read, but I have read the first in her fantasy dragon series called Temeraire, which I enjoyed, so I'm hoping I will continue to enjoy her writing in this story. I've seen it in a lot of people's anticipated releases list, so I am trusting in them that it's going to be a good one. Apologies if you can hear the birds in the background, but there is no way I'm closing my window. It is boiling. I was then sent The Bloodprint by Alzma Zayanat Khan. This is another fantasy novel, a high fantasy novel with a female lead. Again, I'm kind of like on the lookout for like female-led fantasy novels, and this one was actually suggested to me by Claire over at Reading Bukowski, and she sent me a review copy from HarperCollins where she works. She runs a booktube channel which is phenomenal, by the way, so if you haven't checked it out I will link it down below. This one says, a dark force known as the Talisman has risen in the land, spreading ignorance and persecution. It is led by a man known only as the One-Eyed Preacher. A superstitious patriarchy, cruel and terrifying, the Talisman suppresses knowledge and subjugates all women, and it is growing. Yes, I love a fantasy book that explores important topical issues, which this one sounds like it does. So excited for this one. I was then sent a copy of a book by the publishers that I've then since read, and that is Tangleweed and Brine by Deirdre Sullivan. This is a young adult collection of fairy tale retellings that explore these fairy tales that you may very well know from the perspective of the female characters, what they're experiencing, what's going through their mind while these things are happening, and it does not shy away from the darker abusive side of some of the relationships that are often romanticized in fairy tales by like modern adaptations, and it's an excellent collection. I had the pleasure of chairing a panel with Deirdre Sullivan and Louise O'Neill at Bradford Literature Festival, which was absolutely wonderful. They are both fascinating authors, and I really enjoyed Bradford Literature Festival in general, so this was just full of good positive memories for me, and I thought it was an excellent collection. Plus we have to mention this stunning book cover. I then have a couple of books that you will not be surprised to see in this haul, I am sure, and they are the next two books in Juliet Marillet's Seven Water series. So I ordered these both online second hand because I needed them immediately, and I've never seen them in a UK bookshop before. So I paid a couple of pounds for each of them, and they are like red copies, but I don't care. I just needed to consume them. The second one in the series is called Son of Shadows, and the third one is called Child of the Prophecy, the first one being called Daughter of the Forest. And I have read Son of Shadows since ordering it, and I'm about to start Child of the Prophecy. These are high fantasy novels set in medieval Ireland and have a real focus on the fae, the fair folk, fairies in them. The first book is inspired by the fairy tale of the Six Swan Brothers, however the next two, or at least definitely this one, kind of goes off on its own track and is less specifically inspired by one fairy tale and more Juliet Marillet's own plot creation. They are adult fantasy novels. They are stunningly written, slow paced but beautifully detailed, and I adored this one as much as I adored the first one. It actually focuses on relatives of the characters in the first book as opposed to the same characters in the first book, so you're kind of getting a complete story in itself. Although there are overarching threads throughout the series, that means you should probably read them in order, and this one again is about another relative to the Seven Waters family. They're all about the Seven Waters family but different characters. But whilst I was ordering second-hand fantasy books, I also ordered a couple of other books that people had been recommending to me online. The first one is Dragon's Bait by Vivian van de Velde. This is an author whose name I've seen come up a lot when looking for good fantasy to read. She seems to be kind of a classic author in this genre that lots of people love and adore. And this book was specifically recommended to me by Angelica, who also has a booktube channel that is amazing, so I will link her down below as well. And to be fair, I was instantly going to buy this book because it was about dragons and someone had recommended it to me, so that was all the excuses I needed because I love dragons. I'm not terribly sure what this is about. It might be a little bit cheesy, but I'm okay with cheesy. It is about a young woman who the villagers think is a witch, so she's kind of abandoned or sacrificed to a dragon, but she actually then joins together with the dragon on whatever quest then takes place. It sounds kind of mad. It's really short, so I should get to this one ASAP, and I love dragons, what can I say? And another fantasy author that people are always recommending is Robin McKinley. This is the first in one of her series called The Blue Sword. It says, this is the story of Corlath, golden-eyed king of the free hill folk, son of the sons of the Lady Erin. And this is the story of Harry Crew, the Homelander orphan girl who became Haramid Sol, King's rider and heir to the Blue Sword, Gonturan, that no woman had wielded since the Lady Erin herself bore it into battle. And this is the song of the Keller of the Hill Folk, the magic of the blood and the weaver of the destinies. Sounds like real classic high fantasy. I was then sent a book by the publishers I was not expecting to receive in the post, but I'm definitely interested in reading, and that is Melmoth by Sarah Perry. Sarah Perry is the author who wrote The Essex Serpent, which everybody raved about, so I have a little bit of hype going on around her writing, and the plot of this one sounds fascinating. It sounds a bit like a ghost story, in fact. It reads on the inside, 20 years ago Helen Franklin did something she cannot forgive herself for, and she has spent every day since barricading herself against its memory. But the sheltered life she has crafted for herself is about to change. A strange manuscript has come into her possession, and its contents have the power to unravel every strand of her fragile safety net. It is filled with testimonies from the darkest chapters of human history, which all record sightings of a tall, silent woman in black with unblinking eyes and bleeding feet. Melmoth, the loneliest being in the world. This is obviously a proof copy, this is not the final cover, but that sounds so interesting to me, and I love a kind of literary spooky tale. Really up for that, and given all the praise that Sarah Perry's writing has received in the past, I have faith that this is going to be a good one. I don't know if I should be embarrassed, but I also did pick up another Juliette Marillier book. I have fallen in love with this author. What can I say? I've read 4 books by her in the past 2 months, and I'm about to start my 5th. And this is the second novel in the Wildwood duet. They're companion novels. Again, they follow different members of the same family as opposed to carrying on exactly the same plot from the first one, which kind of wrapped up quite nicely. And this one follows one of the sisters of the main characters in Wildwood Dancing, and it's called Sybil's Secret. These are fantasy novels set in Romania, and in this story our character Paula is off travelling the seas with her father, who is a merchant who has plans to buy an ancient artefact, and she's never left her home before, but she is a very inquisitive, clever young woman who is really interested in sort of reading in academia. And it's about the things that she discovers on her adventures. Once again, I also love these detailed fantasy covers. I have 2 more physical books to show you though before I get onto some of the books I have acquired on my Kindle. And the first one is Trail of Lightning, which I believe is the first in the Sixth World series by Rebecca Roanhorst. This was my Page Habit book of the month. So Page Habit is a subscription box where you subscribe to a genre and they send you a new book every month, and that book is annotated by the author, so it's full of little sticky notes, if you can see here, with thoughts from the author on what is going on in that section of the book, what they were thinking when they were writing, and it really adds a nice extra layer to the reading experience. I do get sent Page Habit for free by the company, so just so you're aware of that, but I will link it down below. And I recently changed my subscription from the mystery box, which I was subscribed to the fantasy box, because I've got quite a few exciting mysteries on my TBR, and I'm obviously really into fantasy at the moment, so I thought I would give that a shot. And this was what I received. It tells me that while most of the world has drowned beneath the sudden rising waters of a climate apocalypse, Donata, formerly the Navajo Reservation, has been reborn. The gods and heroes of legend walk the land, but so do monsters. Maggie Hosky is a Dinnitam monster hunter, a supernatural gifted killer. When a small town needs help finding a missing girl, Maggie is their last best hope. But what Maggie uncovers about the monster is much more terrifying than anything she could imagine. There sounds like there's a bit of mystery in there as well, but it's always a nice way to discover a new fantasy author or series that you might not have picked up otherwise, and I do love the addition of the annotations in these books. And lastly, for physical books, is a super random purchase, and that is Mad Kestrel by Misty Maisie. Does sound a little bit cheesy, doesn't it? So I was in Trans Real Fiction, which is an independent bookshop in Edinburgh with my friend Jill, and it sells almost exclusively fantasy and science fiction. So one of the nice things about going into that bookshop is that you find an eclectic mix of fantasy and science fiction that you might not have discovered in other bookshops. And when we went in, I said to myself, I want to buy a book that I would never have picked up otherwise, I would never have heard of, that I have never heard of, and purely discovered through trolling the bookshelves in that store. And this was one of the books that I picked up and sounded kind of interesting. It's a fantasy novel, but it's also about pirates, and I've never read a book about pirates in my life, so I thought that might be quite fun. It follows the captain of a pirate ship, who is a woman, I believe, and she also has a magical power to control the weather that she can't let anybody know about, because again, being magical would put her in danger. I also believe there's a bit of a romance at the centre of this, because it does mention a mysterious man on the back, and we always know what that means in a blurb. But super random pickup. Would be interested to know if any of you have read this or anything else by the author, but it wasn't very expensive because it was a little mass market paperback, so I thought it would be fun to try. I then acquired a few books on my Kindle, some which are review copies and some which I bought. I always get questions when I mention my Kindle. This is literally the most super basic Kindle you can get. It's actually years and years and years old. It was my granny and it was past down to me, but it does a job, it's really handy. And the books I acquired on my Kindle include Ash by Melinda Lowe. This book was only 99p on Kindle, so I completely just caved and bought it in the instant. I looked it up because I thought 99p, how can I resist? This is a fairy tale retelling of Cinderella, but it is a queer retelling of Cinderella. It's a young adult novel that follows our protagonist Ash, who is the Cinderella character. And it's her story. I think we all know the Cinderella story in some version or another, but this has the addition of fairies and fae in it. Again, I've been reading a lot of books about fairies recently, although I didn't realise this included fairies when I picked it up. I have already read it, if that isn't clear, and I enjoyed it. It was slow to start with, but I really enjoyed the second half, and I would read something else by Melinda Lowe in the future. I've heard her book Huntress is even better, so I think I might check that out in the future, but this one was just good fun. It was nice to read a queer retelling of this story, and once I got into it I found it quite quick reading. I then downloaded a review copy of Outrun the Wind by Elizabeth Tammy from NetGalley. So if you don't know, NetGalley is a website where publishers provide ebooks for review, and this can be whether you review them on your blog, on YouTube, or on Goodreads. You can sign up for an account and request books through that, and I just discovered this one completely randomly through searching NetGalley one day and thought it sounded brilliant. It is inspired by Greek mythology. It follows the legendary huntress Atalanta and the goddess Artemis, who is goddess of the hunt, and I believe Atalanta is one of her followers, one of her hunters. But she's fallen out of favour with the goddess, so she must complete a difficult task. I also believe there's a romance in this one between two women, Atalanta and another character at some point, and I love books set in Greek mythology that are inspired by Greek gods and heroes. I think that sounds absolutely fascinating. And finally, I downloaded one more book on my Kindle, which is The Warrior's Path, and this is the first in the When Women Were Warriors series by Catherine M. Wilson. So this book was actually £0 on the Kindle. It was completely free to download, and the reason I looked it up is because somebody had recommended it to me on one of my videos in the comment section. I thought, oh, I'll look that up, see what it's about. Looked it up, and there it was free, so I thought, well, I'll download it, won't I? May as well give it a try since somebody recommended it to me. I believe the author was trying to give women the role of warriors and the lead adventure role in kind of fairy tale type stories like they didn't traditionally have, and apparently the book won. Tamraz arrives in Merin's house to begin her apprenticeship as a warrior, but her small stature causes many, including Tamraz herself, to doubt that she will ever become a competent swordswoman. To make matters worse, the Lady Merin assigns her the position of companion, little more than a personal servant, to a woman who came to Merin's house seemingly out of nowhere the previous winter, and this stranger wants nothing to do with Tamraz. I like the concept, I like the intention that the author set out with when she started this series, so I'm hoping that this recommendation turns out to be a good one. But those are all the books I have recently acquired. I know that there is a lot of fantasy on this list. I can't help it. When I binge, and I just kept picking stuff up and receiving stuff from publishers. However, I think I'm gonna pull it back a little bit. I don't know if I need any more fantasy on my bookshelves at the moment, although I am getting through it quite quickly. So I'm looking forward to reading all of these and the other fantasy books I've picked up recently, and I'll see what I end up binging in the future. But I'd love to hear from you if you have read or are interested in any of the books in this video. I love chatting to you about the books I have recently picked up. It gets me all the more excited, so please do leave comments down below. And until next time, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye!